You meet someone, they feel like the one. Then 6 months and you're wondering how you ended up here again. If that sounds familiar, stay to the end, because the answer isn't bad luck, and it isn't that you have bad taste. It's that nobody ever taught you what you're actually supposed to be looking for. Let's start with the obvious, that nobody says out loud. Most people are running on autopilot when they pick a partner. Women are taught, quietly, from a young age, to scan for financial status, the job, the car, the security, the future income. Men are taught to scan for looks, the body, the face, the metric that gets whispered about before anyone said a single word to her. Everyone ends up shopping for a partner the way you'd shop for a car at a dealership, checking the specs that impress the people watching from the outside. Nobody's shopping for the thing that actually keeps two human beings in the same house for 30 years without wanting to kill each other. And look at where that's gotten us. Divorce rates didn't climb this high by accident. People didn't suddenly stop wanting love. What happened is that almost nobody sits down and actually works out what they're optimizing for before they commit to spending a life with someone. You wouldn't buy a house without a plan. Somehow we'll marry someone based on a feeling in a bar 3 months ago. Dating apps made all of this worse. And I want to be specific about why. They sold you the idea that there are 1,000 fish in the sea, so if this one doesn't work out, just swipe again. There's always someone else one thumb flick away. Endless options feel like freedom. What they actually do is stop you from ever sitting with one person long enough to find out whether the thing between you actually works. You end up choosing nobody, forever, while calling it being selective. Ask anyone who's been on the apps for 3 years, whether they feel closer to a relationship or further from one. You already know the answer. There's also a split in how attraction itself gets treated, and it's worth naming plainly. For men, dating has become a status contest. Who's driving the better car? Who's got the better job? Who was born into money? For women, it's often reduced to a sexualized metric, how she looks, judged against by how she looks, whether she's trendy, preferences that have nothing to do with who she actually is. We all know the saying that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Ask yourself with all honesty whether that's actually how you've been choosing partners, or whether you've just been telling yourself that's not what you're doing. Then there's the group that treats love like a conquest. The thrill isn't in the relationship, but it's in winning the person, getting them to choose you. And once they have, the excitement drains out fast, because it was never really about the person in front of them. It was about the win. If that's ringing any bells, sit with that for a second before you keep watching. I want to bring up arranged marriages here too, because the instinct in most modern conversations is to write them off entirely, and I think that's a mistake worth slowing down on. They get plenty wrong. Plenty of arranged marriages have ended with one partner clearly oppressing the other, and that's not something to romanticize. But underneath the parts worth criticizing, there's a structural idea that most modern dating throws away completely. Pairing people based on shared values and compatible lives instead of a feeling that showed up on a Tuesday night. We threw out the method along with its worst failures, and I don't think that trade was as clean as it looked. So here's what I actually did. Instead of just complaining about all of this, I looked back at every relationship I'd been in and asked myself the boring question nobody wants to ask when they're in the middle of falling for someone. What really mattered, every single time, no matter who the person was? Not the spark. Not the story I told myself about why this one was different. What actually predicted whether it lasted. In the process of mastering myself, 4 things kept showing up over and over, across every relationship that worked and every one that didn't. Quick disclaimer before I get into them, because I don't want you thinking this is a formula for a flawless relationship. The truth is that you will never find someone who checks every box perfectly. That person doesn't exist, and if you're waiting for them, you'll be waiting alone for a long time. What these 4 things give you is closer shot at something that actually lasts, but it's not a guarantee that they do. Love isn't purely a feeling you either have or don't. Treat it like a decision built out of specific inputs, and suddenly the whole thing becomes a lot more manageable, and a lot less like gambling. The first one is physical attraction, and I want to be honest about why this matters instead of pretending it's shallow to say it out loud. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a second. Physical needs sit at the very bottom, not because they're unimportant, but because they're the foundation everything else gets built on top of. You don't build a house by starting with a roof. You pour the foundation first, and everything after that depends on it holding. Attraction is what brings 2 people toward each other in the first place. Yes, Looks fade over 40 years of marriage. That's just biology. But the pull that got you there in the first place still has to exist on day one, where you're not choosing a partner. You're choosing a roommate you're hoping to eventually feel something for. Attraction is also just practically tied to the physical side of a relationship, to intimacy, to eventually raising children together. Pretending that doesn't matter doesn't make you evolved. It just makes you dishonest about your own needs. The second element is values and beliefs, and this one runs a lot deeper than most people want to admit on a first date. The blunt question to ask yourself is this: am I willing to raise children with this person's beliefs sitting right next to mine? This is actually the real reason certain communities still lean on arranged marriage as a system. Religion, upbringing, and values get checked for alignment before either person even meets, instead of getting discovered 5 years into a marriage when it's already expensive and complicated to walk away. How you discipline a child, how you spend money, what role faith plays in your household. These aren't small disagreements you patch over during the honeymoon phase. They're the fault lines that show up 10 years in, right when you're both too exhausted to negotiate them from scratch. The third element is lifestyle and compatibility, and this is the one people skip because it feels less romantic to think about. How do you actually like to live? If you like a quiet, private life, don't fall for someone who wants to document every dinner and every fight for an audience of strangers online. If your faith matters to you, don't convince yourself it won't matter to who you build a family with. If you're someone who needs a slower pace, don't chase someone whose whole identity is built around being seen everywhere, doing everything, always on. This one sounds obvious right up until you're the person ignoring it, because the chemistry felt too good to interrupt with logistics. Compatibility isn't the exciting part of dating. It's the part that decides whether the exciting part gets to last. The fourth element is growth, and it's the one that takes the longest to actually see, because it only shows up with time, not on a first date. Is this person making you better, sharper, more disciplined, more yourself? Or are they an anchor you're dragging from your growth or aspirations? A partner worth keeping doesn't just tolerate your goals, they respect them, and somewhere along the way they find a way to want to align their goals in the same direction you're heading in. If every version of you that spends time with this person is smaller than the version that walked in alone, that's data. Don't ignore it because you're comfortable, and comfortability breeds stagnation. So to bring it all into perspective, attraction, values, lifestyle, and last but not least growth. In that order, and each one building on the last. The same way a house gets built floor by floor instead of all at once. None of these guarantee a perfect relationship. Nothing does, and anyone telling you otherwise is selling something. But run any relationship through these four, and you'll learn more about whether it lasts than 100 dates ever could. If you've been falling for the same type of person over and over, stop scrolling for a second and actually go back through your last few relationships. Run them through these four, one at a time, honestly. You'll probably see exactly where it kept breaking, and more importantly, you'll finally know what you're supposed to be looking for next time. It's also prudent to remember that one of the best relationships anyone can have is with themselves.